Imagine waking up one day and feeling like you're finally in the right place. You have the job you dreamed of, the people around you who inspire you, and the life that once only existed in the back of your mind when no one else was watching. That moment where everything feels aligned isn't born from hustle alone. It doesn't happen just because you worked late or followed the latest productivity trend. It happens when you start with something deeper, something more personal, something powerful enough to guide you through doubt, fear, and failure. It happens when you start with why. Most people know what they want. They can tell you the car they want to drive, the city they want to live in, the job title they want to have. That's easy. Some can even tell you how they plan to get there. They've got a roadmap, a strategy, maybe even a checklist. But very few can tell you why it matters to them, why that goal, that dream, that version of success calls to them. And without that why, without that reason that lives in your chest, not just your head, everything becomes harder. Every setback feels heavier. Every delay feels like a defeat. Because when you don't know why you're doing something, you're more likely to give up when it gets hard, and it will get hard. Let me tell you this story. There was a young woman I once met at a conference. Let's call her Sarah. She was brilliant, ambitious, and on paper, everything looked perfect. Graduated top of her class, got a job at a top firm, and was climbing the ladder faster than most of her peers. But something was off. Every time we talked, I noticed her eyes didn't match her words. You know when someone says, "I'm doing great," and you can just feel that it's not the truth? That was Sarah. So I asked her, "Why did you choose this path?" She paused, then said, "Because it's what I'm supposed to do." And there it was. Not because I believe in it or because I want to make an impact or because it lights me up, but because it was expected. Sarah was chasing someone else's dream, a dream given to her by the world, not one she chose. And that's a dangerous place to live. Because even if you succeed, especially if you succeed, it won't feel like success. It'll feel like a costume that never quite fits. So I asked her again, this time differently, if no one else was watching and there were no expectations, what would you do with your life? And her answer came like a whisper she hadn't heard in years. I'd work with kids. I'd build a school. I'd help people who never got the chances I did. That moment changed everything. Because that's the kind of answer that's rooted in why. That's not about money or prestige or applause. That's about meaning. And when you live from that place, you start to build a life that can't be shaken by failure or rejection or a bad quarter at work. You build a life from the inside out. See, when your why is clear, decision-making becomes simpler, not easier, but simpler. You stop chasing every shiny opportunity and start aligning with what actually matters. You begin to say no with confidence and yes with purpose. You move from reacting to life to leading your life. And leadership, by the way, doesn't require a title, it requires clarity. Your why doesn't have to be dramatic. It doesn't need to involve changing the world overnight. For some people, their why is raising kind children. For others, it's creating something beautiful or helping others feel seen. Whatever it is, it has to matter to you. It has to pull at your soul, not just your wallet. The most successful people I've met all have one thing in common. They know their why. And it's not always glamorous. In fact, most of the time, it's something simple and personal. But it gives them direction. It keeps them grounded when the world gets noisy. And it gives them the strength to keep going when motivation fades. Because motivation is fleeting, it comes and goes. But purpose, that's different. Purpose wakes you up at 5 a.m., not because you have to, but because you want to. Purpose helps you run toward discomfort because you know what's on the other side is worth it. Purpose is what helps you sit in silence with doubt and still take the next step. If you want to achieve everything you want in life, you have to stop starting with what you want and start with why you want it. What's the story behind the dream? What's the pain or the love or the memory that makes it matter to you? Until you answer that, the dream will always feel just out of reach, like something you're chasing instead of something you're becoming. And when you do find your why, protect it, nurture it, share it with people who believe in you, not just people who tolerate you. Because your why is sacred. It's your compass. It's the one thing that will never lie to you, even when everything else does. So if you're feeling lost, stuck, overwhelmed, don't start with a new plan. Start with a new question. Ask yourself, why does this matter to me? And don't stop digging until you find an answer that makes you feel something. Because when you find your why, you don't just achieve more, you become more. And that's the real secret. There's a myth we've been sold that life is only worth celebrating at the finish line. That happiness, fulfillment, even purpose itself only come once we've crossed some invisible line labeled success. But if you talk to people who've actually reached those finish lines, people who've built companies, written books, run marathons, made millions, you'll find something surprising. They'll tell you that the joy, the meaning, the magic, it didn't live in the moment they arrived, it lived in the moments along the way. In the mornings, they got up early to work in silence. In the nights, they almost quit but didn't. In the messy middle where they were still becoming. See, we've been trained to fall in love with the result, the trophy, the applause, the photo at the top of the mountain. The truth is, the ones who stay at the top, the ones who build things that last, aren't addicted to the prize. They're in love with the process. I met a man once who was training for his 10th Ironman triathlon. 10. Just hearing that number exhausted me. I asked him why he kept doing it. What pushed him to keep showing up race after race when he'd already proven himself? And his answer was simple. I love the training more than the race. The race is just a celebration of the work I've already done. That hit me. Because most of us live in reverse. We treat the process like an annoying necessity, something we tolerate until we can finally celebrate. But the process is where life actually happens. That's where you learn who you are. That's where resilience is built, where character is formed. Not at the finish line, but in the quiet repetition of small daily efforts. Think about the best relationships in your life. They're not strong because of one amazing moment. They're strong because of thousands of moments. Listening, showing up, choosing patience, choosing grace. That's process. That's love in action. And it works the same way with our dreams. The reason so many people give up isn't because they don't have potential. It's because they don't like the process. They don't enjoy the work it takes to get there. And when that's the case, no amount of motivation will carry you through, because motivation fades. But love lasts. If you love the process, you won't need to be pushed. You'll pull yourself forward. I once worked with a startup founder who was stuck. Brilliant idea, smart team, but things weren't clicking. She was exhausted, frustrated, ready to walk away. When we sat down, I didn't ask about the business. I asked about her. What part of this work do you actually love? She thought for a moment and then said, honestly, I love designing, getting lost in building the product. That's the part I wish I could do all day. So I asked the next question, and what part are you spending all your time on right now? Fundraising, she said, emailing, pitching, stressing over numbers. No wonder she was drained. Somewhere along the line, she had traded her joy for the hustle. And that happens to all of us. We get so focused on the what, the outcome, that we lose sight of the how, the way we live each day. We stop doing what we love and start doing what we think will get us where we want to go. But what if the way is the goal? What if success isn't just about getting there, but about how alive you feel while getting there? The people who build meaningful lives are the ones who can say, even if I never get the prize, I still love the pursuit. That's not about lowering standards. It's about raising your standard for the life you want to live every day, not just someday. This doesn't mean every part of the process will be easy or fun. It won't be. There will be days when it's boring, days when you feel stuck, days when you question everything. But even in those moments, if you're connected to the process, you'll keep showing up because you'll know it's worth it. Olympic athletes don't train for 4 years because they like standing on podiums. They train because there's something sacred in the discipline, the daily grind, the commitment to the craft. They don't just perform, they practice. And that's where greatness is born, not in the spotlight, but in the shadows. If you want to achieve everything you want in life, you have to stop chasing the reward and start chasing the rhythm. You have to find a way to fall in love with the ordinary, unsexy, slow parts of growth. That's where the power is. A musician who doesn't love rehearsing will never make it to the concert hall. A writer who doesn't love rewriting will never finish the book. A leader who doesn't love listening will never inspire a team. And a person who doesn't love the process of becoming will never feel like they've truly arrived, no matter what they accomplish. So ask yourself, what part of your process do you love? What lights you up even when no one is watching? And if the answer is nothing, maybe the question isn't, how do I stay motivated? Maybe the better question is, am I climbing the right mountain? Because when you're climbing the right mountain, you don't resent the hike. You may get tired, you may slip, but you don't stop because something inside you knows it's worth it. Not just when you reach the top, but every step along the way. That's the secret the world won't tell you. That joy doesn't wait at the end. It's available right now if you're willing to slow down and see the beauty in the build. To stop racing toward the future and start honoring the journey. And the best part, when you love the process, the results take care of themselves. You get better not because you're trying to win, but because you can't help but grow. You keep going not because you have to, but because something in you wants to. And that's when the magic happens. So if you're looking for the path to everything you want in life, don't start by chasing outcomes. Start by choosing a process you love enough to stick with, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard, because that's the path that leads somewhere real. If you've ever tried to change your life, you know how easy it is to start. Starting is exciting. It's full of energy and optimism. You wake up early, set goals, post about it. Maybe you buy a new notebook or a gym membership. The beginning feels powerful. You believe in the possibility of something better. But then comes the second week, the third, the part no one celebrates when the excitement fades and the routine begins. That's where most people fall off. Not because they aren't capable, not because they don't want it badly enough, but because they've been trained to believe that big change requires big action. That if you're not doing it all at once, then it doesn't count. The truth? Real change, the kind that sticks, isn't built in explosions. It's built in drips. I remember talking with a man who lost over 100 pounds, not in some dramatic, made-for-TV way, quietly, over a year and a half. I asked him how he did it. He didn't talk about some crash diet or killer workout. He said, I just decided to walk 15 minutes a day, every day, no matter what. 15 minutes. That's it. He told me that in the beginning that 15 minutes felt pointless, too small to matter, but something inside him knew that the point wasn't the number, the point was the pattern. He was showing up for himself. And once he mastered that 15 minutes, it became 20, then 30, then running, then strength training. But he never started with that. He started with something he could sustain, something so small it was almost impossible to fail. That's the secret. Consistency beats intensity. Intensity is sexy, it's dramatic, it's what gets likes and applause. But it's also temporary. It burns bright and fast and then burns out. Consistency, on the other hand, is quiet. It's the daily choice to show up even when no one's clapping. It's doing the work especially when you don't feel like it. It's trusting that the small thing, done over time, becomes the big thing. You don't need a life overhaul, you need a rhythm. A friend of mine is a songwriter. He writes every morning from 6 to 7 a.m. before the world wakes up. He's done it for years, not because he's constantly inspired, but because he made a decision. He doesn't wait for creativity. He creates the space where creativity knows where to find him. That's what consistency does. It makes you dependable to yourself, to your craft, to your calling. I think a lot of people stay stuck because they confuse discipline with pressure. They think showing up daily means being perfect daily, but perfection is the enemy of consistency. Because the moment you fall short, perfection says, see, you blew it. Might as well give up. But consistency says, you missed a day, that's okay, just come back tomorrow. The most powerful thing you can do is build a habit of return, of resilience, of recommitment. You will mess up. You will get tired. Life will interrupt you. That's not a flaw in the system. That is the system. Success doesn't come from never falling. It comes from never quitting. Let me ask you this. What's something you care about deeply, but you haven't made consistent space for in your life? Maybe it's your health. Maybe it's writing that book. Maybe it's making time for your family or learning a new skill. Whatever it is, stop waiting for the perfect moment to begin. Stop waiting for more motivation or a better plan. Start now. And start small. There's power in small. A single sentence written every day turns into a book. A 5-minute walk becomes a new lifestyle. One honest conversation a week can transform a relationship. We tend to underestimate what we can do over time and overestimate what we can do overnight. Think about water dripping on stone. One drop means nothing, but over time it reshapes the rock. Not through force, but through persistence. You don't need to be the strongest, smartest, or fastest. You need to be the one who doesn't stop. I once worked with a leader who turned around an entire department, not by making bold declarations, but by starting one ritual. Every Monday morning, he'd write a personal thank you note to one employee. Just one. It took him 10 minutes. But within months, the culture shifted. People felt seen, valued, trust grew, all from one tiny, consistent act. We often chase greatness in grand gestures, but true greatness hides in daily disciplines. There's a myth that discipline means restriction, but real discipline isn't about punishment, it's about freedom. It's about freedom, it's about choosing what matters most over and over so that your life aligns with what you believe. Discipline gives you the power to say, this is who I want to be, and then live that out in the everyday moment, even when no one's watching. Especially then, because integrity doesn't shout, it whispers. And here's the beautiful part. Consistency compounds. What feels small today becomes momentum tomorrow. What feels invisible today becomes undeniable over time. So if you want to change your life, stop asking, how much can I do right now? Start asking, what can I do consistently no matter what? That question will change everything. You'll find that consistency builds confidence. Every time you follow through, you prove something to yourself. You start to believe deeply that you're someone who can be trusted with goals, with responsibility, with your own future. That kind of belief can't be bought. It has to be earned daily. And when you stack those days, one on top of the other, that's when the real transformation begins. Not because you had one big win, but because you chose to keep showing up long after the novelty wore off. That's what separates those who achieve everything they want in life from those who only talk about it. They choose consistency over intensity. They don't need to go viral or sprint or do it all at once. They just keep going. If you really want to go far in life, if you want to build something meaningful, something that lasts, there's one truth you're going to have to accept early. You cannot do it alone. It doesn't matter how talented you are. It doesn't matter how disciplined or ambitious or self-reliant you've trained yourself to be. At some point, the path will get too heavy to carry by yourself. That's not a sign of weakness. That's a sign that what you're doing is actually worth it. The bigger the dream, the more hands it requires. We live in a culture that glorifies the lone wolf, the self-made person, the hero who pulls themselves up by their bootstraps and climbs to the top on their own. But that story, it's a myth. Even the most iconic success stories, when you look closely, are filled with people behind the scenes. Mentors, friends, partners, encouragers. Nobody gets to the top without support. Nobody makes it alone. The people who thrive, who actually enjoy the journey, are the ones who choose people over pride. They know that progress isn't just about working harder, it's about being surrounded by the right relationships. I remember meeting a woman at a leadership retreat. She had built a successful business, raised a family, spoken on stages. By all external measures, she had made it. But when she spoke, you could feel something was off. So I asked her what she was proud of. She said, I'm proud of what I've built, but I built it in isolation. I thought asking for help meant I was weak. Now I just feel tired, alone. It stuck with me. Because so many people are chasing their dreams like it's a solo marathon, when in reality, it's a relay. You're supposed to hand the baton. You're supposed to lean on others, not just for help, but for perspective, for encouragement, for the reminder that you're not crazy for believing in something bigger. One of the greatest advantages you will ever have in life isn't your resume, it's your relationships. The people who remind you who you are when you forget, the people who push you, not out of competition, but out of love. The ones who hold the mirror up when you're doubting yourself and say, look, this is what I see, and it's worth fighting for. When you surround yourself with people like that, everything changes. Not because they do the work for you, but because they make the work feel possible. And this goes both ways. Just as you need people, people need you. You can be that mirror for someone else, that voice of belief when there's a shaking, that one person who doesn't just tolerate their dream, but honors it. Sometimes the greatest act of leadership is simply sitting across from someone and saying, I believe in you. I'm with you. One of the most powerful stories I've ever heard came from a man who had just launched a nonprofit. He was young, full of passion, and barely scraping by. He told me he almost gave up until one day a mentor showed up unannounced, sat with him and said, I've been watching. You're doing something special. Don't stop. That 30-second conversation gave him the strength to keep going. Years later, that nonprofit is still thriving, not because of some viral moment or investor check, but because of belief. Because someone chose to speak life into him when he was ready to quit. That's the power of people. And yet we often avoid this kind of connection. Why? Because it requires vulnerability. To build meaningful relationships, you have to be honest. You have to let people see you, not just the polished version, but the messy, uncertain, still in progress version. And that's uncomfortable. It's much easier to pretend you've got it all figured out. But the irony is the more you pretend to be strong, the more isolated you become. And the more isolated you become, the more likely you are to break. Strength isn't in pretending you don't need anyone. Strength is in being brave enough to say, I do. When we choose people, when we invest in them, listen to them, and grow with them, we create a network that not only supports us, but multiplies us. Ideas get better, solutions get faster, challenges get smaller, because you're not carrying them alone. Even the word achievement feels incomplete when it's not shared. You ever notice that? You hit a milestone, but if you have no one to celebrate it with, it loses something. There's something sacred about looking across the table and saying, remember when we dreamed about this? Look, we made it, because the point was never just to win, it was to win together. So if you're building something, whether it's a career, a company, a calling, ask yourself this. Who's in your corner? Who's on your team, even if there are no titles? Who gets the unfiltered version of you and loves you anyway? Who tells you the truth not to tear you down, but to help you grow? And if you can't answer that, maybe it's time to stop pushing so hard forward and start reaching sideways. Build the relationships now that will carry you through later. Because life isn't about climbing a ladder. It's about weaving a net. One strong enough to catch you when you fall. One tight enough to hold you when you feel like unraveling. And here's the amazing thing. The more you choose people, the more they choose you back. It becomes a cycle of support, of belief, of shared momentum. In the end, you will achieve far more with people than you ever will without them, not just because of what you'll build, but because of who you'll become along the way. At some point in your journey, whether you're chasing a dream, building a business, healing from something, or trying to grow into a version of yourself you've never been before, there's a question that's going to show up. Quiet at first, and then louder with every setback, every delay, every moment that doesn't go the way you planned. It sounds like this. Is this even worth it? It's a hard question, and the most dangerous thing about it isn't the words, it's the timing. Because it doesn't show up when things are easy. It shows up right when you're tired, right when the work feels thankless, right when your vision starts to blur and you can't quite remember why you started in the first place. This is the moment that breaks most people, not because they lack talent or discipline or drive, but because they forget their why. See, your why is the engine. It's the deep reason underneath the goal, underneath the hustle, underneath the plan. It's not to be successful or to make money or to prove them wrong. That's surface, that's outcome. Your real why lives deeper. It's the part of you that wants to matter, to contribute, to live a life that says, I was here and I made a difference. The reason most people burn out isn't because they're doing too much, and it's because they're disconnected from meaning. They're running hard, but they've lost sight of where they're going, or worse, why they're going there in the first place. I once spoke to a group of teachers who were in the middle of one of the hardest years they'd ever faced. Budget cuts, angry parents, impossible expectations. You could feel the exhaustion in the room. So instead of talking about strategy or systems, I asked a simple question. Why did you become a teacher? There was silence at first. Some people looked down, others shifted in their chairs, and then one woman near the back raised her hand. Her voice cracked as she said, because someone once believed in me when no one else did. and I wanted to be that person for someone else. That changed the entire energy in the room. Because suddenly they remembered this wasn't just about test scores or lesson plans. This was about impact, about legacy, about reaching into a young life and planting a seed that might grow into something beautiful. That's what a why does. It brings your work back to life. If you want to achieve everything you want in life, you have to do more than set goals. You have to anchor them in purpose. Because when things get hard, and they will, it won't be your checklist that carries you through. It'll be your clarity about why this matters, why it's worth the pain, the patience, the perseverance. And this isn't just true for teachers, it's true for entrepreneurs, parents, athletes, artists, students, for anyone who's chasing something bigger than comfort. When I work with leaders, the first thing I ask isn't, what are you building? It's, why does this matter to you? If the answer is unclear, I know the foundation is shaky. Because a house built on unclear reasons will collapse under pressure. But when your why is solid, when you can name it, feel it, fight for it, that's when you become unstoppable. And here's the thing, your why doesn't have to be flashy. It doesn't have to sound good on a website or look good on a PowerPoint. It just has to be true. For one person, it might be creating something they never had growing up. For another, it's showing their kids what resilience looks like. For someone else, it might be helping others find their voice because they spent too long feeling invisible. Your why is personal, sacred, and it will evolve as you do. When I started doing the work I do now, it wasn't because I had a big business plan. It was because I saw people with extraordinary potential who had no idea how capable they were. I couldn't not do this work. That's what purpose feels like something inside you refuses to let it go, like a pull more than a push. You'll know you've found your why when the work becomes bigger than the reward, when the mission becomes bigger than your mood, when showing up becomes not just something you have to do, but something you get to do. Now let me be clear. Remembering your why won't make things easy. It won't make you immune to doubt or fatigue or failure, but it will give you the strength to keep walking when the road gets dark. It will remind you that this struggle has a point, that this pain has a purpose. And sometimes when your own belief is shaky, your why becomes the spark that lights it again. I've seen people come back from rock bottom, not because they suddenly had more resources, but because they reconnected to why they started. I've seen parents turn their lives around because they saw the future in their child's eyes. I've seen artists who hadn't created in years pick up the pen again because they remember the healing they bring through their work. Purpose heals. Purpose fuels. Purpose grounds. If you're feeling stuck, don't rush to change your strategy. Pause. Ask yourself, why did I start this? What do I hope it creates? Who does this serve besides me? Because the bigger your why, the stronger your will. When you know what you stand for, you won't fall for just anything. When you know who you're fighting for, you won't walk away just because the path gets rough. So if you've been chasing goals, grinding, pushing, and you're starting to feel lost, maybe it's not a sign that you're weak. Maybe it's a signal that it's time to go back to the beginning. Not to start over, but to reconnect, to remember not just what you're doing, but why it matters. And when you remember that, everything changes.